Okay, this is going to be my review of MiSide. Now, this is it looks like it's a dating simulator. It's not. It's a psychological horror. It is very different from what it presents itself as. I enjoyed the game tremendously, and I didn't think I would because I was just looking at the art for it, and I'm like, oh, this is just another dating sim. But then I looked further into it, and it's like, oh, this has actually got something to it. Um, there's uh, there's a lot to this game, and it's got a lot of good social commentary. The way they did it is more like AAA used to do things, where they would have the concept of what they wanted to, the message they wanted to convey, and they basically went that and took that to its logical extreme and put it in this game world and presented it to you so that you can make your own assumptions about it, come to your own conclusions. That's how AAA used to handle these things. These days, AAA is very much more about preaching down to you and talking down to their player base and lecturing you about how they think you should think. Whereas, like with MiSide, they present this concept to you and you make your own conclusions. They don't try and convince you one way or another. They just, you know, give you the scenario, give you the situation, give you what they wanted to kind of comment on, kind of emphasize is the word. So with this, it's more about the emphasizing the concept of some of these gotcha games, dating simulators, that kind of thing, and gaming in general. There's a lot of things to draw from this game in terms of its plot and its story. And I don't want to get too far into it because I don't want to give you guys any spoilers. So this is going to be a spoiler-free review. The only spoilers really is going to be the content of the demo, which is basically the first little part of this game, which I'm actually showing you right now. And it gets to a crucial, a critical point where things change dramatically, and then the real story starts. And that's basically where the demo cuts off. And you can tell that right from the demo. Like this is the moment where things go off the rails, and the psychological horror aspect of it becomes the game. And until that point, it's really not quite as much of a horror genre as it is a dating simulator genre. So the only thing you can really derive from the demo is the mechanics of the game, because that's basically the same throughout it, how you play the game, how you navigate the world, and the general concept of how it's going to function. But the story is not at all there. There's hints, but yeah, it just gets pretty wild, and it's pretty fun, and it's pretty interesting. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It gave me a lot of things to think about. Certainly as a game developer, I mean, some of these things are a little abstract, but there are some other things that certainly made me think about how I'm approaching game development and how things are working, and a lot of that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, I mean, it gave me a lot of food for thought. But even just any gamer out there, non-game developer, there's a lot of things to think about with this game and how it presents this world. Just philosophizing about it, I guess. I think that's going to be the term for a lot of people that are going to take away from this. And yeah, otherwise, it's a very well polished game. It's very well written. It's very consistent. There's a lot to it. It is a short game, so it's only about. I beat it in less than 4 hours. Well, I finished it in less than 4 hours. So it's fairly short, but it's also like pretty cheap. I mean, it's an indie game, and it's very well written. Then there's a lot to it. In that 4 hours, there's a lot of mechanics packed into this game. Basic controls, it's WASD. Your functions are like E and Q, and EQ and space, I guess, would be the big ones, and then shift once in a while. So it's fairly standard first-person architecture. Now you can't tell that from this, but we're just about to shift over here. In fact, this is kind of the moment it goes from this 2D mobile gotcha game to something very different, and that's kind of one of the major turning points in the demo itself, is that you wake up and you're in her world, in Mita's world, in her house, in 3D, and this is basically how the game plays for the rest of it, mostly. There is some shifting of things going back and forth, but for the most part, this is how the game operates. You're a first person WASD walking around, and you can see, obviously, I mean, if you're watching this a few months from now, it's got like a lot of the Christmas theme going on, the snowflakes and the wreaths on the doors and stuff, and that's I think just for the Christmas season. So those are still up right now. So that might be different when you get into the game yourself if you buy it, or if you're playing the demo. If you're playing the demo, it might not be there like that. So overall, though, I think this is a great game. I highly recommend you checking it out. The only people that I would say shouldn't check it out are people who like have a sensitivity to a lot of flashing, or don't do the jump scare thing or the creepy thing very well. If they don't handle that, this is not a dating simulator. This is a horror game. So if you can't handle that stuff, then don't do it. If that's your bag, then I highly recommend you check this out. It's not like super scary or anything. I mean, it didn't really get me jumping in my seat or anything, but it was fun. You know, it's a fun game. And like I said, some interesting commentary on it, without being preachy. And that's something I really appreciate, because it's impossible to find in AAA. You got to go to indies like this to get that kind of a game now. And so yeah, I mean, I think overall though the story is fairly consistent. I don't think there's a lot of branching. I know of at least one that I found, which is the big one, and that's like going between that 4-hour game and a super short game that ends very quickly. And that's something you'll find out after you play through the demo. There's a divergent path that you take, and it basically just ends the game with a different end result. But I think there's a lot more to this, because it sounds like there's some end game content that they're working on right now. So there's going to be more of an end game to this game. So there's going to be a lot more in the future. Definitely looking forward to that. That's interesting, especially after you've played through the game and you know the true story of everything. Then I think that end game content is going to be really interesting. But yeah, it's quite an interesting concept. It's quite an interesting game. A lot of, like I said, philosophical points to think about after that you take away from this. And the other thing that I wanted to talk about is the mini games. There are a fair amount of mini games in this game, and they're not overbearing. They're not like a lot of the mini games from the old days were very like jarring, but these are not. These make sense. They fit with the story. They fit with the world. They do make sense in the context. So there's a little bit of a corner of your eye, somebody waving in the window, and so it does get a little creepy in the demo, but not much. It doesn't go off the rails like it does in the actual story and really go down that rabbit hole. But that's the fun part, and that's definitely, if you like the demo and you like the mechanics and you want to know the whole story, I definitely recommend you checking it out. Going back to the mini games though, they fit. They are not overbearing, and they're very different from each other. There's a ton of variety in the mini games, and in the interaction in the world. There's just it's very they did a lot of work to make sure that things felt right. So a lot of games it would be like, you press E to activate the action, and the action is the action. With this game, they've gone through the trouble of making sure that every action in the game makes sense mechanically. So one example I guess I can put out is in the 2D game. When you start, you have the chopping of the vegetables and you're sliding a slider down like it's a touchscreen phone game. In this world, you actually go back and you chop vegetables in this world, and you're using your mouse to chop the vegetables. So it's a different mechanic. Even though it's still chopping carrots, it's a different mechanic because you're in first person versus the mobile game. So it does. They try to make it fit. They try to make everything make sense, and they put a lot of effort into that, and it's appreciated very much, at least by me, to see that level of detail being paid attention to. Again, not something you're seeing much in AAA these days. They're watering down their mechanics. This game is expanding upon their mechanics and trying to make them fit as much as possible. So that's kind of some of the craft that is put into this game, the care and the consideration And clearly, I mean, it's very smooth, it's very solid. They did a lot of polish on this game to make it work as well as it does, and I think they probably had to, because down the road things get a little glitchy, and intentionally glitchy. So those things are going to be especially important to have, that very smooth polish, so that the glitches are clearly part of the story, part of the game, and you don't start second guessing yourself. Which, that's something that was important, and I think that they did an excellent job with the polish to make sure that those glitches really stood out and made sense. Other than that, I don't know what else to say. I mean, it's just been a great experience overall, and a cheap 4-hour game, well worth the input. The other thing I do want to talk about, though, is the numbers, because I love to make the numbers make sense, and get into all that detail. So we're going to go ahead and look at those right quick. So first of all, obviously, here's the Steam page. Overwhelmingly positive, 49,000 reviews. Insane numbers with this game. And they did use a publisher. They did use IndieArc as the publisher. But all the reviews are great. Absolute gem of a game, very polished and immersive. The game story was amazing to follow. Amazing story to follow. 10 out of 10. Recommend this game. Also, Sleepy Mita is by far the cutest Mita. So you do meet different Mitas throughout the story. I played the demo for this game a while back after seeing it on YouTube. The full release definitely exceeded my expectations. I definitely recommend going in blind too. Several parts of the game caught me off guard, and I think it's more fun experiencing it that way. It absolutely is. I highly agree with this. I definitely don't want to spoil that, that rabbit hole, because it's fun to go down that rabbit hole and experience it for yourself. I would recommend against watching any gameplay or any of that. And if you guys want to see what I think of this game, like actually really delve into it with spoilers, certainly let me know in the comments, and I'll make a video on that, and spoiler warning it for you severely, so that to avoid it until after you play the game. But I don't know. I probably won't do that unless you guys really want me to do a video on it. But I prefer not to spoil anything for you, certainly in this review. So those are the numbers on Steam, and then let's go to SteamDB and actually look at some player counts. Now you can see here 23,000 is the peak player count. It's starting to drop off now, so people are starting to settle in. Also, I think with the holiday season, with Christmas and everything, people had time to really jump into it and play it. And also, like I said, there's not that endgame content yet, and maybe that endgame content might do something with these numbers, but it sounds like it's going to be a while before that's out there, so these numbers are going to keep going down, and for a little while at least. As far as owner estimates, I would say, the middle two, 245,000 to 1 million, and it's probably somewhere in the middle there, so probably like 500,000 to 700,000 actual owners. It could be significantly higher, because if you look at the reviews, 50,000 reviews kind of tells me that it's well over 500,000 actual players, because how many people actually review the game they play. It could be higher because it's an indie game, it's more niche. But yeah, I don't know. It certainly seems like it's selling very well, though, and it's not something I even really paid attention to. Like I said, I was looking at this as another dating simulator along the long list of dating simulators on Steam that I just completely ignore and don't care about. It is not that. And so yeah, it's very different. It's very much a horror game. That's where its roots are, and it doesn't look it. And that's kind of what caused me to ignore it for several days after release, and not really pay attention. But now, they started piquing my curiosity, people online, on social media, and finally took the plunge with the demo, and the demo convinced me to check out the game, because I wanted to know that story. So I bought the game and played through it, beat it, or finished it, and so I'm in here too. I'm one of these concurrent players. But yeah, I think with the end game stuff, it's going to go back up. It's going to get a little more steam, so we'll see what happens there. And also, I want to honestly get back in and play through it again, just to see if there's any other branching story arcs, see if there's any other options, because there are choices that you make in the game that I think do have an impact, but it's very hard to know. And also, once you've played through it once, you pick things up, and so you want to try those things again. So there is some replayability as it stands right now. Certainly, I'm gonna spend another 4 hours going through it, or more. I might do a couple of playthroughs. Who knows? But yeah, it's worth kind of poking at it and see what happens. Because I don't know. I'm pretty sure I got the bad ending. I don't know, but I'd like to see if I can get a good ending. So that's what I'm gonna try for. And I could look it up online, and I really don't want to. I want to experience it, like I said, like that review said, for myself. So I'm kind of intentionally going in blind as much as I can to continue through this, and kind of poke at the mechanics and poke at those choices and see what happens, see if there's any branches that I can discover on my own. And maybe after a few more playthroughs, I'll just start looking stuff up online. But I really do enjoy going in blind. I think that's the way you should game. I don't think you should have the whole story right off the bat. And I think that's why I don't really like streaming, is because if I really enjoy the game, and if it's a story-based game like this, and I'm not going to want to watch a stream on it, and I'd rather experience it myself. But I know a lot of you guys are the opposite. You'd rather just watch the stream and see it through someone else's playthrough as opposed to playing through it yourself. But I guess I'm kind of the opposite in that case. So if you're kind of like me, that's probably the way to go for this. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all I got for MiSide without spoilers. Definitely, again, highly recommend you checking it out if you like these kind of horror games, psychological horror especially. But yeah, so here's the carrots. There you go. There's the carrots. We're going to see that right at the end here of this review. But yeah, let me know what you guys think of this game. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you like these kind of videos, subscribe to the channel, and I'll talk to you guys later.